Thank you very much, Katie-Ann. Please first allow me to apologize to Takamiya-san for not recognizing Japanese. So, welcome to you, and many apologies. My name's Phil Middleton. I'm chairman of the OMFIF Digital Monetary Institute. I'm pleased to welcome, as ever, a wide range of friends and colleagues from across the globe. Today we have members and colleagues on board from the Americas, United States and Canada, from Brazil, from the Caribbean, from all over Europe, too many to mention in detail, and one or two insomniacs in the Far East whose Netflix subscriptions have clearly expired and can find nothing else better to do. So good evening to you all late at night. This is the fourth in our virtual roundtable series of Digital Money Institute seminars and roundtables. It's actually the fifth. The four today to focus very largely on retail wholesale CBDC and the prospects for that, either account-based or tokenized. It doesn't seem so long ago that wholesale CBDC was the thème du jour, as we say in English, that every bank, private sector company was looking to experiment with wholesale digital money, be that for cross-border payments, be it for trade finance, be it for securitized asset trading. Comparatively little at the time was said about retail, and a number of banks and indeed large-scale technology companies announced that they were making major investments in the area. It then, as is often the way with innovations, went quite quiet for a while. And it is only recently, I would say, that it has come back to the fore again. OMFIF's done some recent research on it, which suggests that the majority, almost about a fifth, of investments in this area have gone into cross-border payments. But we're seeing an awful lot as well going on with securitized asset trading. And one of the central banks that's been at the forefront in thinking about this in recent months has been the Banque de France. And I'm very delighted to welcome, well, slightly in absentia, Valérie Fasquelle, who's the Director of Infrastructures, Innovation and Payments at the Banque de France, who is overrunning in another meeting, will join us shortly. But the day has been saved by her colleague, Monsieur Christian Pfister, who is advisor to the Director Général of Financial Stability and Operations at the Banque de France. He's going to take us through some thoughts, the presentation for the next 30 minutes or so, after which the floor is open to questions. And as Katie-Ann suggested, you can either send them via the chat box facility or via email to Katie-Ann. We'll get them through to me as I can. If when you're putting those in, you can state your name, rank and serial number, that would help. So thank you, and over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you for this introduction. So I'll start with slide 2. As you may know, Governor François Villeroy-de-Galhau, in a speech on the 4th of December of last year, announced the launch of CBDC experiments to be conducted by the Banque de France from 2020, from this year. Our approach here in the bank aims to take into consideration 3 solid underlying trends in the world of payments and in financial markets. First, the growing digitalization of economies in search of economies of scale and optimization of processes in financial services while technologies are accelerating. Second, big tech projects in the payment market at both wholesale and retail levels. I'm thinking, of course, of projects such as F-Narrative and Libra. In many instances, the aim is to remedy, as Philippe was referring to a moment ago, remedies deficiencies of mechanisms handling cross-border payments which combine high costs, opaqueness, and low execution speed. The third trend is a trend towards the tokenization of assets and the emergence of new tradable assets associated to new rights such as utility tokens. These trends support public and political demand for CBDC. As a consequence, central banks must meet three challenges. First challenge is to sustain financial innovation based on new technologies so that society can benefit from better market efficiency. Private entities often mention first the cost of post-market activities and potential gains they could make by streamlining their processes. Second, the capacity offered by smart contracts to devise new financial products. Second trend is to preserve the central role of central bank money, in particular in financial markets. The GFC, and most recently the COVID-19 crisis, reminded us the importance of having a liquid and risk-free asset to settle financial transactions. The principles for financial market infrastructures adopted in 2012 recommended any, I quote, FMI to conduct its settlement in central bank money where practical and available to avoid credit and liquidity risks, end of quote. Moreover, Target 2 Securities provides a full range of services, such as optimization processes, auto-collateralization mechanisms, and so on, which contribute to the harmonized treatment of securities covered by central security depositories. Central bank money is thus a pillar within this continuum of services. That is why central banks should take advantage of new technologies to continue improving those processes and consider offering central bank money to make settlement possible for new financial assets and new financial needs. Third, to preserve financial stability, reinforce AML's FT, and in fine, the protection of consumers. This is a subject of ongoing work under the FSB umbrella. I turn now to slide 3. The reflection around central bank money poses the old but fundamental question of its role relative to other assets. At the summit of the pyramid, central bank money only represents a small part of money supply, that is, the sum of central bank money and commercial bank money. The reason is that central bank money, in the form of both banknotes held by the public, and reserves held by banks, coexists with commercial bank money. Nowadays, commercial bank money accounts for the bulk of money supply, so the distribution of credit. This organization, which is a result of history, allows the central bank to perform its two main missions, setting monetary policy and maintaining financial stability by contributing to safe and efficient payments in the first place. Credit institutions, which is the second layer in the pyramid, the one in between, benefit from the safety of central bank money and the efficiency of payment infrastructures. These strong economic fundamentals make it possible for credit institutions to distribute commercial money to the public at par with central bank money within a regulated framework to control risks. In the recent years, crypto assets, including stablecoins, have aimed at offering new means of payments that are widely accessible, user-friendly, and at low costs. However, they also present risks. This is in particular the case for global stablecoins, as pointed out in last year's G7 report. This puts pressure on the traditional banking model and on the role of central banks. The emergence of these new assets with new players has revived debate on the role of central bank as issuers of money, but also as regulators, as operators of market infrastructures, and as catalysts. Beyond the need for regulation, the questions for central bank are: 1, how react to consolidate the base of the pyramid and preserve public interest? And second, how take advantage from new technologies? One possible answer could be to issue a CBDC. Slide 4. In parallel with the usual distinction between retail central bank money, i.e. banknotes, and wholesale central bank money, i.e. reserves, we also draw here a distinction between a retail CBDC and a wholesale CBDC. The motives for issuing a retail CBDC are different from those for issuing a wholesale CBDC, but both forms of CBDC aim at providing perfectly safe and liquid means of payment. Regarding the issuance first of a wholesale CBDC, the main reasons would be, first, to provide the market with a settlement asset which is currently not available in the DLT environment. This would enable financial institutions to settle tokenized securities directly issued and registered in the DLT setting. Second, it would also potentially enable exchange of new categories of assets to be created. Indeed, a series of private initiatives tokenizing financial assets have recently emerged, in particular in Europe. The aim of these initiatives is to generate new business opportunities while improving the functioning of market infrastructures. In this vein, more and more actors intend to tackle the cash lake of securities settlement through the issuance of settlement coins in order to ensure the delivery and settlement of tokenized assets. These initiatives bring up questions for central banks as operators of payment systems. Specifically in Europe, T2S is a technical platform for the DVP of securities in central bank money. There is also a risk that disorderly approaches, in particular when it comes to the modalities of settlement, lead to market fragmentation with various pools of liquidity, an issue that T2S enabled to tackle. At the same time, we cannot ignore the opportunities offered by new technologies, for instance, to be able to deliver security at T+0 instead of T+2 nowadays. Regarding a retail CBDC, the main reasons would be, first, to guarantee access to central bank money to the public. Compared to banknotes, a retail CBDC would be more convenient. And compared to bank deposits in commercial bank money, the retail CBDC would be perfectly liquid and without credit, even if those risks are residual today with deposit insurance. The second reason would be to reduce the cost of cash management from the central bank perspective, but also from the consumer perspective, as a retail CBDC, for instance, would make it possible to lower the costs incurred, for instance, in the form of getting to a cash dispenser, also reduce the risk of loss or theft. Third, a retail CBDC could also complement cash or even act as a digital substitute for it. In a situation where the use of cash has declined significantly, as in Sweden, a retail CBDC could offer the public a risk-free alternative to private digital solutions. However, this scenario does not look like a credible scenario for the euro area in the near future. At present, there is no explicit demand in the European Union from market participants for a retail CBDC. The situation reflects the characteristics of the European market, with inter alia high levels of access to banking services. Meanwhile, attention should be paid to the growth of crypto assets, in particular global stablecoins. However, one should note that a retail CBDC would only partially address the issues driving initiatives such as Libra, namely the inefficiencies of cross-border payments and low levels of financial inclusions in some parts of the world. In particular, a retail CBDC would not by itself resolve risks relating to KYC security and AML-CFT implementation, which contribute to long execution times and, along with high liquidity cost, to high overall cost. Now, I'm supposed to give the floor to Valérie, if she's joining.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everyone. So we will move to the second part of the presentation for today. So I think that Christian was crystal clear as to the motivation for retail CBDC and wholesale CBDC, which are of different natures. However, in both cases, we need to examine carefully the modalities of issuance and of the design of the CBDC which might be issued, and also the implication for central banks, and of course the impact on the monetary policy, on financial stability, and of course for the ecosystem. So that's why, from our perspective, we do think that it's pretty much important to experiment to make sure that we properly understand the effects such as CBDC may trigger on all the aspects I've mentioned. So that's the reason why Banque de France has launched a program for experiment at the end of March. And as you see on the slide, the experiments have a threefold objective. Basically, first to see how conventional use case for central bank money can be achieved through a CBDC, which is based on different technologies. Second, to identify the benefits of introducing a CBDC for the current ecosystem, but also to understand how a CBDC might foster financial innovation in the existing ecosystem. So to look at the performance of the processes, to look at the security, the efficiency of the service, and to which extent these may trigger productivity gains. The third objective is obviously to conduct afterwards a detailed analysis of the potential effects of introducing the CBDC on financial stability, monetary policy, and the regulatory environment. So the first element is to see to which extent we do have possibilities to develop transactions relating to financial assets, including existing financial instruments, but also new assets on the basis of these new technologies. To look at, well, at the potential consequences for trading volumes and the way intraday distribution of trading on the intraday money market is performed, to look at the impact on monetary policy transmission, and to see whether there could be restrictions imposed by the legal and the regulatory framework. So the objective of Banque de France is obviously to lead this analysis thanks to the conclusion of the experimentations we will carry on, and that we will carry on with the selected applicants. So if we move to the next slide, showing the use case we would like to assess. Basically, we would like to cover three use cases which are flagged on the slide. The first one is what we call DVP, so basically payment in central bank money against the delivery of listed or unlisted financial instruments. The second being what we call PVP, so that means payment in central bank money against the digital currency of another central bank. And the last one being payment in central bank money against digital assets in compliance with what is in our Code monétaire et financier, so the legal framework we do have in France. Moving to the next slide, just to share with you what are the elements Banque de France will take into due consideration for these experiments. So basically, we are very much open as concerns some of the parameters. In particular, we aim at testing various technologies to understand and assess the various implications for market infrastructures industry, with the need to preserve the efficiency and the stability. So we are very much agnostic as far as the technology is concerned. Second, we are as well very open as to the profile of the candidates, and depending of the proposals they have to make, and obviously the capacity and the ability to promote innovation will be a main element in our assessment. And the last point is that we are similarly very open to the possibility for financial instruments to be used during these experiments to be issued and exchanged over a period extended beyond the experiment. In parallel, on the other hand, we will be very attentive to a couple of elements. Obviously, solutions performance, security, and continuity will be of the utmost importance for us for selecting the different applicants to these experiments. A second point to mention is that it's very important for us not to have any money creation at this occasion. Means that the token reflecting the amounts in euros in digital form will be destroyed at the end of the accounting day on which the payment will be made. Payments in central bank money will be made in accounts open with Banque de France, and the corresponding amounts will be covered as need be by collateral in one or more segregated accounts, which will be opened by Banque de France in its own name. So all the security measures will be put in place to avoid the creation of money. And the last point of attention for us is the payment finality. Of course, the payments will be recorded in the accounts in central bank money. And as far as tokens do not have legal force, this implies the need for credit institutions participating in the experiments to have an account in our books or to be participants to the European market infrastructures in charge of securities settlement. So what's next in the process when we move to the next slide, which shows the timeline of the experiment. So basically, we will start the experiment on the second half of this year, and depending on the complexity and sophistication of the different experiments, these experiments will be waged sequentially over some months, depending of the characteristic of these experiments as they are proposed by the market actors. So we are currently in the process of we have been receiving the different dossiers by the mid of May, and we are currently in the process of analyzing these numerous dossiers we have been receiving in order to set up bilateral discussions with the promoters of these experiments, and these will help us to make our choice, which should be definitely settled by mid of July. And moving to the next and last slide, obviously these experiments are not only the experiments of Banque de France. They will act as a contribution we will do to a broader discussion within the Eurosystem, which will make any decision on whether or not to launch a CBDC. So this decision-making process is not the one of Banque de France, but we aim at contributing in the most useful way to this reflection. And of course, our objective is to learn by doing and to collect all fruitful elements coming from these experiments and share them with the rest of the ecosystem. Thank you very much for your attention. We are ready, Christian, myself, to answer the possible questions you may have.
Christian, Valérie, thank you very much indeed. Most informative, very, very interesting indeed. And before I hand over to some colleagues out there, the question I'd like to ask you, which is, you mentioned on your slide, indeed we noted a couple of weeks ago, you did a small pilot program with Société Générale Forge around covered bonds. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about that, clearly without breaching any confidences. And in particular, what lessons did you learn from that, if any?
So indeed, yes, indeed, very concretely, as a first step, we experimented on 14th of May with the use of a central bank digital currency to test the sale of securities, which was carried out by Société Générale. So we are in a business case related to DVP, which is one of the three I mentioned for the call of for applications we have been launching as well. So as you understand, the experiment was carried out very recently, so we are still in the process of analyzing the different technical elements of the dossier. There are two major lessons I can already share with you. The first one is that it worked, which is a major lesson, and which is very promising for the rest of the experiments. And the second one is that for this experiment we had a overall infrastructure which was composed of two different blockchains. The first one, which was a public one developed by Société Générale, which was interfaced with a private one developed by Banque de France, on which the circulation of the digital currency took place, similarly as the delivery versus payment in itself. So the big achievement we also reached with this experiment was the interoperability between two blockchains, which is also something very promising and interesting for the rest of the experiment. So these were, at least for the time being, the two elements I can share with you.
Thank you. I think one of the things that is striking and impressive about the Banque de France work is the multiplicity of experiments that you are doing, the sort of let 1,000 flowers bloom approach to things. And I think that's going to generate an awful lot of fascinating insights, some of which will be usable, some of which won't.